Is Obamacare a fundamental right that our founding fathers would have envisioned for all Americans? Well, House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi apparently thinks so.
Our founders wanted for them life, a healthier life, liberty, the freedom to pursue their happiness, not job locked, but having benefits that health care policies that that are portable.
And that's not the first time she said it. So what do you think? Here's a sample.
I don't think that the founding fathers ever intended for the government to be so controlling over our lives.
We can't live with the same rules they lived back then. They didn't have soap.
I think the founding fathers were very emphatic that each man can make his own destiny, could work hard to make their own living, do well for themselves, and build the American dream.
So who's right? EMAC, would the founders have approved of Obamacare?
No. I like the guy who said they didn't even have soap back then. And, the founding fathers, with all due respect to the founding fathers, would not have given, at that time, Nancy Pelosi even the right to vote back then. So, the founding fathers were about, the democratic, basically the states basically states governing how they are going to rule. In the Commerce Clause, it was about, where the health reform came in through the Commerce Clause. It was basically about dropping barriers to trade between the states. I do not think the founding fathers would have been central government control over health.
Bill, it was all about restricting government, restricting the reach, restricting the intention of government. That's really the basics on which this country was founded, right here in the Bill of Rights.
Well, there's nothing in the Bill of Rights about health maintenance organizations. That's because back in those days, all the doctors could do was bleed you to death. No, what there was something in the preamble to the Constitution that said, we're doing this to provide for the general welfare. There's also something in the Constitution about statutes. They're enacted by both houses of Congress and signed into law. So I think this qualifies. And by the way, there's nothing in Article 2 that forbids Congress from passing stupid laws. Those are constitutional.
Yeah, but they had something to say about laws that are too complex. Mike, let me just read something from James Madison. It will be of little avail to the people that the laws are made by men of their own choice if those laws be so voluminous that they cannot be read or so incoherent that they cannot be understood. To me, that's the definition of Obamacare.
David, the strategy for those in favor of Obamacare at the administration has been to lie about it, and then once it was implemented, to systematically erode its controls without going to Congress for approval, despite the fact that people in the Obama administration have said they do not have the statutory authority to do that. What they want to do is they keep saying 5 years from now or 6 years from now, we'll all love it. But at that time, it'll be like a big fat tick embedded in our society like Medicare, which, by the way, is on track to be broke in 20 years.
Rick, the founding fathers, come on.
Well, actually, I like what you said. That was pretty interesting. It can be read. I've done it 7 times, which kind of substantiate your second part.
Nancy Pelosi apparently didn't do it till it was passed, and I doubt she did it then.
You're suggesting that Nancy Pelosi has a penchant for overstating her case? Is that what you're saying?
Newsflash.
Look, Bill kind of stole my answer, so I'll make it brief. It's a yes and a no. Look, Thomas Jefferson is on record as having said that all doctors are quacks. So they didn't see a real upside in health care. On the other hand, they did empower Congress to make these kinds of decisions, and Congress has, in fact, passed this law whether you like it or not. So the founding fathers would have thought it was silly in their time because they didn't think you could really get health care, but they did see the future in the sense of if Congress wants to pass a law to do it.
All right, but John Tamny, this was not an accidental statement by Nancy Pelosi. She said it several times before. She said it last year around July 4th again, and it gets to really the crux of what this country is, what makes it different. And one of the founders, by the way, one of the sort of the godfather of the founders of this country was John Locke. He lived slightly before them, but they used him as the basis for a lot of their thinking. He said the end of law is not to abolish or restrain, but to preserve and enlarge freedom. Now, does Obamacare do that? Preserve and enlarge freedom?
Certainly not. Obamacare and the founders would never have passed Obamacare and would be struggling in their graves looking at it because the founders were libertarians. They wrote a document meant to preserve our rights as individuals and to severely limit the power of the federal government to do much of anything. So they'd be bothered that it was passed. That it's a total failure wouldn't surprise them because government's not created to create health care markets. But what would most bother the founders is this speaks to the federal government going well beyond strict constitutional limits.
I think so. Rich, what do you think?
Well, you know, to follow Bill Baldwin's logic, then Congress has every right to try to repeal this law. And if the Republicans take the Senate in the fall, then they have every right to, you know, put President Obama on the veto pressure. So, you know, let's keep this going. It is not settled law. And Mike Ozanian raises a great point about the misuse of executive orders to continually change this law.
Stay tuned. The story's not over. The government's bringing something back for green cards that the cashing in gang says will just flush more of your green right down the tank. But first,